But first, China's dictatorship is about to sign a deal that is going to tighten its grip, not only its grip on its own people, but on what used to be the biggest enemy of dictatorships everywhere. We are at a frightening moment in history. Point of shame for many Catholics, I'm afraid. This week, American Secretary of State Mike Pompeo flew to Rome to plead with the Pope. Do not sign this shameful deal. Do not next month renew a secret agreement the Pope made 2 years ago with China that, in effect, gives that dictatorship control over who may be a bishop in the Catholic Church in China. It's extraordinary. Under this deal, it's effectively China, not the Vatican, that appoints Catholic bishops. Bishops, it thinks, are loyal to this brutal communist regime that is right now actually persecuting Christians who refuse to join its official churches. For instance, last Christmas, Chinese officials closed down a Catholic church in Jiangxi province, a church that wouldn't join its Catholic Church, the official communist Catholic Church. They took down the crucifix from above the altar and locked it away, and also broke a statue of Mary. In Fujian province, churches that wouldn't sign up with the communists had their power cut off and were closed as alleged fire risks. The home of the auxiliary bishop Vincenzo Guo Zijin and fellow priests were called fire hazards and had their water and electricity cut off. The bishop's assistant, Liu Maoshun, he was arrested and, he says, tortured. The same's happening to Protestant churches which refuse to join the communist Protestant church, the tightly controlled one. They're also persecuted, like this one raided in May. And another 100 Christians were arrested in this raid on an underground church. A prominent Protestant pastor, Wang Yi, who wouldn't join the Communist Church either, and he met US President George Bush. He was punished. Wang was second from the left in this photo. He was punished by being charged with subversion and disappeared for a while. And this is the dictatorship that Pope Francis has signed a secret deal with. A deal that has given it more power over who becomes a bishop in China. In fact, the Pope has already accepted more than half a dozen bishops picked by China. And that's not all that China seems to have gained from its dealings with the Pope. Have you noticed how the Pope says nothing about China jailing a million Muslim Uighurs? How he has dodged criticising China's crackdown on Hong Kong and its freedoms? How his church there instead now publishes textbooks for schools that include prayers to China, with lines such as, "I will learn to love my country like Jesus did in order to show my gratitude to you." It seems to me this dictatorship has the Pope on a string. And despite all this persecution of his own Catholic Church in China, he will, that's what the Vatican signalled last week, the Pope will renew this deal that gives China this power over Chinese Catholics. And he won't be moved. In fact, the Pope this week refused to meet two influential people begging him to reconsider. One was the retired Bishop of Hong Kong, Cardinal Zen, who spent 4 days in the Vatican hoping for a meeting he never got, to tell the Pope not to appoint a new pro-Beijing Bishop of Hong Kong, who seems to be about to get the job, and not to sign this deal.
A bad deal is worse than no deal. So better no deal than the bad deal. They are powerful. Now they are arrogant. They are not going to give you anything. So they want a surrender.
So Zen, who couldn't get a meeting with the Pope, sent him a public warning. Do not betray your church. Do not betray Chinese Christians opposed to this tyranny. One day that tyranny will fall, he wrote, and when it does, we will discover that the church has collaborated with this brutal regime. The church will no longer have any moral authority. US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo issued the same warning. The church would lose its moral authority. Pompeo also flew to Rome. He was also snubbed by the bishop this week. Couldn't get a meeting, but did give a powerful speech.
Nowhere, however, nowhere is religious freedom under assault more than it is inside of China today. Those of us given the gift of Christian faith have an obligation to do our best to bless others. To be a church permanently in a state of mission has many meanings. Surely one of them is to be a church permanently in defense of basic human rights, a church permanently opposed to tyrannical regimes, a church permanently engaged in support of those who wish to take the risk of freedom of which Pope John Paul II spoke, especially, most especially, where religious freedom is denied or limited or even crushed.
Now, Pompeo's reference to the great John Paul II, our saint. Now, that was a man who knew that communism had to be fought as an attack on human freedom, on human dignity, on freedom of conscience, and on the fundamental values of his church, of the Catholic Church. He fought communism all his life as a Polish priest and as a pope until the Soviet Union finally collapsed.
Niech wstąpi duch Twój. Niech wstąpi duch Twój i odnowi oblicze ziemi tej ziemi.
Joining me is a Catholic priest and author from Melbourne, Father James Grant, who has campaigned against persecution and is founder of Chaplains Without Borders. Father Grant, thank you for joining me again. John Paul II fought against tyranny. The Pope is selling out to it, it seems to me. Why would he make this deal with China?
Well, you've painted probably quite correctly, Andrew, a fairly bleak picture of what's going on at the moment. And that's the great issue, I think, with the whole thing, is that the deal is secret. And I can't for the life of me see why it needs to be secret. And you mentioned John Paul II before. If it was the case that Francis intended to go to China and he intended to affirm Catholicism in China and he intended to criticise some of the things about the regime in China, that would be a very valuable thing. But he hasn't said he wants to do that. And he hasn't even said he wants to do mission in China. So we don't know what exactly it is that the Vatican gets out of this deal. So that's a great mystery. And Cardinal Burke was there yesterday at the foreign minister there, Pompeo's talk, and also asked the same thing. What is the basis of the secrecy around this? And it goes to another deeper level even of what it means to be a Catholic, because I also come to that view that Catholicism's about transforming people, but it's also about transforming societies. And it's got to speak out against societies that need change. And that would appear to be what's happening in China. There's been no talk from the Pope at all, not about Tibet, not about the Uighurs, not about Hong Kong. And I can't see anything. The situation in Taiwan's getting a lot worse. And again, there's a lot of Catholics in Taiwan, and he seems to be very silent on that. So it's not just... It's not just that there's a deal.
Explain to me, Father Grant, explain to me, another saint of the Church, Gregory VII, the Pope 1,000 years ago, risked his life to insist on the principle the Church has followed since. It is the Church who appoints the bishops. It is not some powerful prince down the road who does it and makes the bishop loyal to him. He risked his life and had the Holy Roman Emperor on his knees in the snow in front of his home, begging him for forgiveness. And this bishop, and this Pope gives it away. How can this happen?
Well, this is the great mystery about this particular arrangement and the continuation of the arrangement, because fundamentally, what kind of Catholicism do you want to plant in China? Now, if you want to plant a bland kind of thing that has no impact and doesn't challenge the government and doesn't try to transform people's lives or transform society, then probably this is the way to go about it. You're not going to make any change. And I'm not quite sure how that form of Catholicism would be successful anyway. So
you're so right. I think that's right. Now, can I just ask you, though,
you're going to have a deal. Yeah, sorry.
Can I just ask you, why is it, do you think, that Communist China fears Christianity?
Well, Christianity is fundamentally opposed to everything that communism stands for. It's against the collective. It emphasises the rights of an individual. It emphasises the rights of community. And particularly, interestingly, it also maintains the family unit as the key essence of what it is to be human. And in China lately, of course, with the one-child policy, you'll find that there are many couples, or what Chinese call families and what some Australians call families too, where there are no children at all. So they're really, in the Catholic sense, they're not actually functioning families in the way the Catholics have traditionally understood this. So what's happened in China is that in many cases, the state has become the substitute for the father figure and the family. So it's the state that dictates that, because there isn't really a great numbers of, there are lots of individuals put together that look for guidance from beyond them. So I think that's another fundamental way that the Catholic Church in China should be advocating. It should be advocating for family life. It should be advocating for those units. And it should be, that's what you build on. That's what you attract. But I don't know if China has a lot of those. Well, I mean, it does have a lot of them, but comparatively, that's not the basis of the way the moral fibre of Chinese society is currently found in. It's not found in a family, it's found in the state. And there's a problem for the Catholic Church.
I think that's right. I think that might have looked across the borders to South Korea and seen that the rapid growth of Christianity there transformed with a series of military dictatorships into a thriving democracy. And now the church, Christianity is fast rising in China, but between 50 and 100 million people now there are Christians. And I think they're starting to get a bit worried about this kind of stuff. Father Grant, it's always terrific to talk to you, and may I congratulate you on the work that you do.
Oh, thank you, Andrew. Good luck to you as well.